This stream is sponsored by Brilliant.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
Our chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight downside, SCE off. Bring in, SCE off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the live view of Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. SpaceX is getting ready for another Starlink launch. We're on a Falcon 9 rocket here from Florida. 53 Starlink satellites getting ready to make their trip to orbit in just under 40 minutes or so. The launch is currently scheduled for 6:59 a.m. Eastern Time, and we're going to be bringing you live coverage as usual. My name is Thomas Burkhart. I am the news director here at NASA Spaceflight, and thank you all so much for tuning in. Of course, it's not just me. We got a couple other folks on commentary joining me this morning. So first and foremost, we have Alex on studio commentary. Alex, is it even morning for you? I'm not sure, but welcome to the stream. How you doing?
Yeah, it's already the afternoon over here. Hello, everyone.
Thanks for joining us, Alex. Also here in Florida, we have Julia Bergeron on commentary. Julia, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Good morning, Thomas, and good morning, everybody from the coast of Titusville. That's where I'm watching today. And good afternoon, Alex.
All right. We also have in the background, you might not hear his voice, but you'll definitely see him pushing buttons and pushing levers because it's Michael Baylor producing the stream as always. So Michael, thank you so much for your support. Also on the commentary team, we have Nick on commentary from Starbase. Nick, how you doing?
I am doing just dandy, waiting for the sun to rise over here in Starbase, but looks like there's a beautiful sunrise over there in Florida.
Yeah, we were treated to a very beautiful sunrise this morning after the launch was actually delayed slightly. The launch was originally scheduled for 6:20 a.m. Eastern Time, but SpaceX targeting a backup opportunity just a little bit later at 6:59 now, so a new T0 that we're targeting this morning. But either way, thank you for joining the stream. And then also here, not on commentary, but NSF's own Stephen Marr is out here for photography, so look forward to his photos and imagery after the liftoff today. But thank you all so much for joining us. We do have a go for propellant load, so SpaceX is into propellant loading operations, and of course we'll keep you updated on the status of the countdown as we get closer to liftoff. But also, as always, we'll be taking your questions. So if you have any questions about today's launch and about anything that you are seeing or talking about, please feel free to tag us in chat at NASA Spaceflight, and we're going to answer as many of those as we can over the course of the countdown and the launch. Really quick, let's go through a brief overview. Alex, you want to just overview what the details of today's Starlink mission are? Of course, it's not the first Starlink mission. There's been plenty of them, but what's going on for this one?
Sure. We have 53 Starlink satellites going to the Shell 4 of the Starlink constellation, and this is, I think, the 47th dedicated launch for Starlink constellation. So that's a lot of launches that we have had for Starlink. And today we have used Falcon 9 booster, which is very sort of like the tradition nowadays. And this booster actually started flying as a Falcon Heavy side booster, B1052. And on its third flight, it was basically converted into a Falcon 9 booster. And it flew in January of this year on the CSG-2 mission. It flew another Starlink mission in March. And it's flying another Starlink mission today, which is the 5th flight. And we have another already a question in the chat, which I wanted to bring up because now that I'm talking about the booster, it kind of fits with that. And it's by, I'm sorry about murdering their name, Jeroen Westnick. And they ask, could you talk about the fact that this booster was repurposed as a regular Falcon 9, but it's being repurposed as a Falcon Heavy side booster again? And yes, it's being repurposed on the 9th flight, actually. So that's going to be a very weird Falcon Heavy launch. So yeah.
So that's being a couple of flights from now going to be, we know that it's going to be going back to a Falcon Heavy booster for the Viasat mission. Is that right?
Exactly, yeah. With the other side booster is going to be also from the previous flights of this booster B1053 flew also with this one on Arabsat 6A and STB2. So they're going to be joined again, but one is going to be a little bit more of an expert at flying.
Yeah, thanks for. Oh, I like that. So we're gonna have a really, really dark and scorched side booster, one that's not so scorched, and then a brand new center core. Do I have that right?
Yep,
That is gonna be a
exactly.
weird looking rocket.
Franken Falcon, I call it.
There we go. I like it.
Flight proven,
So yeah,
Franken. I love it.
yeah, there we go. So 53 Starlink satellites on board. Of course, we've got a drone ship recovery as always. Julia, what drone ship is out there, and what support vessel is out there on for today's recovery operations?
Let's see. We have a shortfall of gravitas is going to be the landing zone, and it is our traditional northern trajectory zone off the coast of the Carolinas. On that note, later on today, we will be expecting a very clean looking 1073 from the last flight coming in on a shortfall of gravitas. So Jetty Park is where people might want to be this afternoon, roughly before the cruise ships come in, I guess.
Yep, sounds like a good time here. Also, we'll be gearing up for some Starliner OFT2 coverage starting today and into tomorrow for the actual launch. So stay tuned for some photos and imagery from that as well. Busy couple days here on the Space Coast. But yep, so there's our recovery details for today. A shortfall of gravitas being the landing zone for today, like Julia said. I believe we have the 2-burn orbital insertion profile for today. Do I have that right, Alex? Someone fact check me.
Yep, 2 burns.
Yep. Okay. Cool. 2 burns. Let's see. Is there any other details? Is that all the details for a Starlink launch? I think we've kind of covered everything.
Yeah, they're usually these
Those are
days.
the only
it's
factors that ever
nothing-
change, right?
Yeah, it's not really that new these days. It's just like they're launching a lot of satellites into into the Starlink constellation, and that's pretty much it. And use booster. That's actually the last flight was sort of the exception to the norm.
Right, yeah.
Because it was like a new booster, but yeah, these days it's pretty much the same thing. But hey, I'm super excited every time we're seeing a launch because it's like they are getting more data out of this rocket, and they can reuse boosters whatever whatever number flight they want to, because it's their own mission, so they can take that risk. It's a lot of data that they're getting from this, and they can experiment about that. If you see my latest article from the past launch, you've seen that SpaceX is experimenting with a few things on these flights. So this is actually really good I think, because I'm really excited about rocket launches, but also because it lets them toy with the rocket and make sure that for other flights, more important flights, is very reliable. And that's the important thing I think.
Yes, of course. All right, so we've gone over the overview of today's flight, and now I think it's time to dive into some questions. Nick, are we getting some questions that we can start answering?
Absolutely. Our first one's coming from Peter here, and he asks, will the satellites have to compensate for the launch delay today? Because we did have that slight launch delay.
That is a good question. So the launch time doesn't really have much to do with like orbital altitude or anything like that. It is mostly about which plane the satellites are going to be going into. And so the satellites won't actually do much that different from today. The satellites will still raise itself as they normally would for a typical Starlink mission profile. They're just going to be orbiting in a different plane relative to the Earth. Basically, as the shells of the Starlink constellation get more and more full, SpaceX will actually have less of these opportunities to use like backup windows and things like that, because there will be planes that already have satellites in them, so they won't be able to launch at that time. But right now, they're still working on filling the shells of the constellation, so they've got some room where there's shells next or planes next to one another that don't have satellites in them, so they have some backup opportunities like they do today. But the satellites won't do much different. They'll just be raising themselves into a different plane than they were before.
Nice.
I'm also going to do a quick zoom out because we got a cool visual happening right now on the Space Coast. So we mentioned a sunrise going on. Let me see how this looks. There we go.
Oh, that's awesome. That's quite a
Beautiful.
view.
There. And if I knew how to expose the camera properly, it would look even better. There we go. Anyway, some more questions, Nick?
Yeah, so it looks like Kay has asked, does Michael's camera software track rocket only work for fixed cameras, or is it used at the Kennedy Space Center too? So was that Michael's camera magic there, or was that you?
So this is me right now, but I believe some of Michael's camera magic is going to be making its way to other places as well in the not too distant future. So stay tuned. But I know I know a lot of people have loved the tweets that Michael's been putting out showing the tracking software doing its stuff. It's really cool stuff.
Absolutely crazy stuff. And do we know how many Starlink satellites will be in orbit after this launch? Asks BN102.
Well,
Oh,
I've got
geez.
my
Hey,
spreadsheets
Alex, can you look it
out.
up quick?
Oh
Yeah, I was
yeah,
gonna say,
I have
I know we can
all my
find that out pretty
spreadsheets
quickly.
out for this. Okay, so the total amount of satellites launched, which is not the total amount in orbit, is going to be 2,653 satellites launched in total. But some of them have re-entered, obviously, because things happen in orbit. And the total amount per Jonathan McDowell, by the way, which he has a really good website for this, is 2,405 satellites in orbit with this launch. So like you basically have to subtract 53 from this launch to figure out how many of them there are now, and then you have that number. Yeah. So yeah, that's a lot of satellites. That's more than 2,400 satellites in orbit. People are now talking about Adrian being also the spreadsheet guy.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Are we allowed to have other people with spreadsheets on? Is that a rule or something?
I think it is a rule somewhere. I need to check the NSF rulebook here. Sorry.
Oh yeah, we'll pull that out. No worries. But yeah, again, if you're just joining us, please keep the questions coming. Tag us at NASA Spaceflight in chat, and we'll try to answer your questions. We're just under, checks the phone, 25 minutes and counting. And everything on track so far for today's Starlink mission from 39A. Nick, got some more questions? You can keep them coming.
Absolutely. So Carl asks, what is the trajectory today? We'll be able to see it over in North Carolina. I believe Julia already mentioned that it is the standard trajectory, right?
Yep, it's the standard northeast trajectory. So the Carolinas, if you've got some clear weather, definitely take a look to the east once the launch has occurred, and I would fair chance you'll be able to see it. Also,
I was gonna say,
I
I highly recommend, because they might get a really pretty second stage.
Right, yeah. With the sun rising right about now, we might get some very good lighting for this morning's launch. So, not like a jellyfish effect, because that happens before sunrise, but it should be a pretty spectacular launch, we hope.
Okay. So Joshua had asked if the launch being just a few minutes after sunrise, if we'd get the jellyfish. So I guess we won't get the jellyfish, but what kind of cool atmospheric effects can we expect here?
Rocket launch.
Just a rocket launch, that's good enough, right? Actually the original T0 might have been really good for a jellyfish at 6:20, but with the delay, probably not, just because the sun has already risen. But either way, should be a clear morning, hopefully, for the launch, and the fact that it is sunrise, hopefully it's not too hazy or anything, so it should hopefully just be a clear view this morning. Best of luck to everyone who's going to be looking east after liftoff.
And
also, just a shout out to this beautiful sunrise happening right now.
Absolutely. That's gorgeous.
I have to edit a picture, but wow, is it a beauty today.
Absolutely. Lead Dan asks, solar transits are some of the coolest launch photos. I wonder if anyone was able to set up for this one in time, given the late T0 change. I'm assuming that we don't know anybody who has any photos out there. Anybody named like
Yeah, no, you would have to
Steven.
go to the north. You'd have to go to the north of here for that to line up. I know Steven is here at the press site with me, and I don't think Julia is far enough north for that to work. But I don't know. Maybe someone got creative. We'll see.
Well, I sure
No,
hope so.
I'm not far enough north, but had this been a launch from 39B, that would probably make an amazing shot from where I am, but not a
Oh, yeah.
transit.
Gotcha. It was a very last minute change. I don't know how nimble the photographer industry here at the Space Coast is. I don't know. I was trying to make a space startup joke. It didn't really work. Anyway, next question.
Yeah, let's see here. Philip has asked, do you think that the turnaround limit is now range support, pad turnaround, or drone ship availability? Because they are getting pretty quick on their turnaround times.
Well, it's really hard to say because we don't have a lot of insight into what's going on with like the whole turnaround stuff. And some of the stuff that I do know is that the rockets are almost always ready for flight. They have like a whole hangar X at Roberts Road, which a bunch of with like a bunch of boosters inside being prepared for flight and being turned around and everything. And almost always they are ready even before the payload. And so they are able to basically put the booster out into the pad and everything. And I think right now it might actually come down to the drone ship. But even then, that is also being turned around a little bit faster than we've seen traditionally. So they're doing a lot of work to get it done rather quickly.
And right on cue, I'm going to point out that our famous T-minus 20-minute event, so another sign that the countdown is proceeding nominally for today's launch. The lines on the transporter reactor are being purged as they move into liquid oxygen loading on stage 2. So that means RP1 loading on the stage 2 is already complete. Loading is continuing on the first stage as well. Propellant load ongoing for today's liftoff, targeted for 6:59 a.m. Eastern Time.
Speaking of fueling, one of the actual things that I wrote on the last week article was precisely that for Starlink missions, SpaceX is loading these propellants at a colder temperature to be able to pack a little bit more onto the tanks and basically be able to put more satellites into orbit. Because if you not only increase cadence but also increase the amount of satellites that you launch per launch of a Starlink, then that allows you to not have to do so many launches at the end of the day when all things are done. So that's really impressive. I think that they can safely do this, without any sort of problem that they have had in the past. But they know the rocket. They after more than 100 flights, it's already well known for them, and I think that that's the main driver for these improvements. They know the rocket, and they know where to change things with good enough confidence.
Yeah, gotcha. Also, while we are counting down again under 20 minutes and stuff to go for today's launch, I do want to thank everyone who's tuned in and everyone who sends support our way for these streams. I know we're getting a bunch of super chats that are also coming in as well. Nick, can we run through those really quick? Jeez, I can't even speak.
Absolutely. A really generous super chat from Jirwa. He says, I love that you all keep covering the boring, in quotes, Starlink launches too. No such thing as a boring rocket launch in my book, and I couldn't agree more. Every launch is special, even if they are a little routine. Looks like Andrian has joined on the Capcom member, so thank you for your membership. We appreciate that a whole lot. It helps us keeps the lights on around here and keep the robots fed with plenty of yummy electricity. Andrew has also super chatted and said, "Good morning from Stockport, England." Well, good morning, Andrew. I guess it's probably not morning over there right now, is it? Huh? What time is it over there?
11:42 a.m.
Yeah, yeah.
right
So
now.
technically late
Okay.
morning there still, so he's good.
Yeah.
Technically got in there on the technicality. I like it. I like it. And David is also joined as a new member at the flight engineer tier. So thank you, David, so much for the generous support, and all of you who take your time to watch our content and interact with us. We really appreciate it. And yeah, let's get back to some questions. Does anyone know? Oh, this is an interesting one. I'm not super familiar with the kind of layout there at KSC, but why was the shuttle rotating service structure removed when SpaceX took the pad? I'd assume that's that thing the black tower has replaced, right?
No. So there was a fixed service structure and a rotating service structure. And we don't have Chris G on today, but I'll be able to fill in with some shuttle knowledge that I do have. So the tower that we see now, the big black tower, is the fixed service structure. It didn't always look that way. It used to be more of a gray color, and it didn't have a whole bunch of cladding on the side. But SpaceX made some changes to it to kind of help weatherproof it a little bit more and things like that. Also, just give it sort of the SpaceX aesthetic, if you will. But there was also a rotating service structure that, for the shuttle days, was used to help load payloads and things into the payload bay while the vehicle is already out at the pad and access the payload bay and things like that. So that structure, however, was removed once SpaceX was starting to launch their Falcon 9 rockets, because obviously Falcon 9 doesn't need it, and it was just another thing that they were going to have to either maintain or wait for it to, crumble under Leica maintenance. So it was better to just safely deconstruct it and get it off the pad since they weren't going to be using it anymore. So yeah, so there was an extra structure there. If you go back to some shuttle photos, I think you'll see what I'm talking about. But SpaceX removed it because they didn't need it.
I guess that makes sense. Falcon 9s are slightly different than
Yeah,
than
just a little bit. Although it is worth mentioning that SpaceX will be adding a structure with a similar purpose, although it'll look a little different, because when SpaceX adds some vertical payload integration capabilities at the request of the U.S. Air Force primarily, there is going to be a new kind of mobile service tower that can roll over the rocket and enclose it so that they can encapsulate and not encapsulate, but load payloads while the rocket's already vertical. And that serves a similar purpose, although it'll be much different from the rotating structure for like a sideways payload bay on the shuttle, but a similar purpose. So SpaceX is going to have something not too different in the not too distant future.
Interesting. And Java Man asks, will SpaceX use all 3 drone ships for the next Falcon Heavy launch? I believe so, right?
No. So
Oh,
the
the
next
RTLS?
Falcon Heavy launch is now expected to be Psyche, which is the mission to the asteroids with NASA. And I believe the landing profile for that mission is the side boosters returning to land, but the center core being expended. Do I have that right?
Yep.
Yep, so a
That's
bit of
right.
a weird energy requirement for that mission. And of course, we never like to see Falcon cores expended, but for some of these really high demanding Falcon Heavy missions, we're going to have to see that sometimes. But the side boosters will be coming back and landing on a return to launch site profile. There's also coming up the next Space Force mission is USSF 44, which will have 2 side boosters landing on drone ships and a center core expended. So 2 of the both East Coast drone ships will be used for that mission. But you have to remember that the 3rd drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, is on the West Coast, so it's not going to support any Falcon Heavy flights. So we won't see a triple drone ship landing anytime soon.
Revo4 asks, how far from takeoff does the Falcon 9 land on the ship? So I guess that's asking how far downrange is the drone ship typically for the Starlink mission?
For this
Julia.
mission, oh well, Julia, go.
I was going to say, well, if somebody's in front of a computer, they'll get an exact, but it's roughly 600 kilometers to the northeast of Florida.
Yeah.
Just off the coast
this
of the
one,
Carolinas.
exactly. For this one is 636.
There we go.
So yeah, that's the distance.
And the fairings are just a slight bit farther away, but my understanding is that the fairings are getting closer and closer to the drone ship, I believe probably to make recovery efforts just a little bit faster.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easier when you have, either Bob or Doug, really close to the drone ship and also to the fairing recovery. So that makes things quicker and faster.
And kind of related to that, Pika asks, what direction will the rocket be pointing? I am in South Carolina. So that would be east, right? It's over the ocean.
I believe the
Up.
correct answer is pointy end up and flamey end down. So, yep, see, Julia's on the right track. But no, yes, it will be flying northeast. So if you're in the Carolinas, definitely go ahead and take a look. Carolinas, Georgia, and even sometimes farther up the east coast of the U.S. might be able to catch a glimpse of this morning's launch. And on that note, should just be noting that we're about 11 minutes away, and we are all on track for liftoff today. No issues being worked so far. Take a couple more questions, though, Nick, if you've got them.
Absolutely, yeah. I was just figuring out which one was next. So Soham asks, in which computer language does the famous and amazing Michael write his amazing software?
Mike, let's see. Michael in our back channel says Python. So there you go.
Python, yippee skippy. That is very cool and sounds like a snake. That's about all I know about that.
I'm actually not experienced with I have to do a fair bit of coding, but I've actually never done Python either, and I keep being told by people that I should learn Python. So maybe I should get on that. But anyway, that's a discussion for a different time.
Jen Lucas asks, is it theoretically possible to put a Falcon 9 second stage inside of a Starship and go this way further without needing to refuel? And that seems like a Kerbal Space Program mashup if I've ever heard one.
Definitely something to be tested in Kerbal. So basically using a Falcon 9 upper stage as a kick stage, fueling it would be interesting because you need some sort of umbilical to fuel a stage that's sitting in a payload bay, but I think it would physically fit. So maybe, but I don't think that's planned anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But we'll
Good
have to
idea
try
for
that out.
Kerbal, though.
Absolutely. Great question from Endeavor. Asks, why doesn't Falcon Heavy also launch Starlinks since it has bigger payload capacity?
This is a great question. So the reason you say it has greater payload capacity, which it does. Right now, the Falcon 9 launches are kind of set up, the number of satellites on any given launch are a mass constraint. So it's the maximum mass that Falcon 9 can throw to its given insertion orbit while enabling a drone ship recovery with those healthy margins and things like that. They could fit more into the fairing, but then they would have insufficient margin to do a drone ship landing, and they don't want to be expending rockets on especially these kind of flights. So why not go to Falcon Heavy? Well, the problem is once you get to Falcon Heavy, eventually you would be volume constrained in your payload fairing pretty quickly, actually, because there's only room to add a few more. And the benefit of adding a few more satellites on a launch, but also then having to conduct Falcon Heavy missions, which require 3 boosters instead of 1, require more propellant, things like that. The cost of those launches is slightly higher, and not even slightly, are a fair bit higher. And so because of that, there's the benefit is not really worth the trade-off there. It's more cost effective to be launching a couple more Falcon 9 launches than saving just a couple launches by launching on Falcon Heavy. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I answered that okay.
I think so. Do we have some time for some more Falcon Heavy launches, or do we need to move to the next thing?
We can do one more question if you want, Nick, and then we'll get another update on the countdown of things.
Absolutely. I had a good one lined up here. Let's see. I think John asks, do you think there will be more upcoming Falcon Heavy launches that they'll build another drone ship? Because we have how many drone ships do we have here currently, Julia?
Right, so
East Coast?
Yeah, Julia, I'll take
East
her
Coast.
thoughts on this.
That's okay. East Coast, we have 2. We have a shortfall of Gravitas, and just read the instructions. The OG Of course, I Still Love You is over on the West Coast to support the Vandenberg launches. But I don't think we're going to have more drone ships. If anything, we're going to have more platforms, and not knowing orbital mechanics nearly as well as other folks on this stream, maybe could those become another platform instead of a drone ship?
They certainly could. I mean, there's possibility for pretty much anything to go out there and serve as a landing platform, but I'm not sure we're going to see that. But either way, we'll keep an eye on it. No rumblings of new drone ships or anything like that. But it's hilarious that you mentioned orbital mechanics, Julia, because I did want to actually point out and thank the sponsor of today's stream, which is Brilliant. And the subject that I chose to talk about on Brilliant today happens to be orbital mechanics. So Michael's going to be showing off some of the courses that Brilliant offers about literally space things. You can go and learn about the things that we talk about on these streams. We get questions all the time about insertion orbits and how satellites get to their final operational orbits after missions and things like that. There's even a segment on Brilliant about elliptical orbits, and there's a lot of interactive tools that help you learn these kind of material even better than us just talking about it here on our streams. And so we want to give a big thank you to Brilliant for helping sponsor and help support these streams. And if you want to go check out this information out on Brilliant, the first 200 folks to use the link in the description do get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. So feel free to check that out. There's a whole lot of topics about gravitational physics and the things that cause orbits to be the way that they are. And you can learn all about the intricate details of orbital mechanics, literally like full detail space mechanics stuff is on Brilliant. There's a whole lot of different topics for different age ranges and things like that. So no matter what your skill level going into it is, you can definitely learn more by checking out brilliant.org. So thank you so much for Brilliant for sponsoring this stream. And I think that covers our ad spot for the day. So an update on today's countdown, a little under 6 minutes to go. Everything on track so far. We are into Merlin 1D engine chill at this point. So the Falcon 9 engines on the first stage getting chilled with a little bit of liquid oxygen to help thermally condition them for liftoff. And you can see that the rocket's nice and frosty. The propellant's pretty much fully loaded. It'll be a couple more minutes before they are completely loaded and ready to go. That wraps up about a little over 2 minutes before launch. So, Nick, we can take just a couple more questions before we get to liftoff here, if you've got a couple.
Absolutely. Let's see here. Anthony asks, how many of the Falcon 9 engines gimbal on the first stage? That definitely sounds like an Alex question.
All 9 engines.
All 9, but the center one can gimbal a little bit more. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Mainly because of geometry. It's lower down, and so it has a little bit more of wiggle room, literally wiggle room.
Yeah, but really, we can actually talk about this because I believe it's not even a result of, like the engine itself is actually different because all the engines are actually the same, but you can, because they mount there's just the way they mount the center one gives it more room to move because all the engines are kind of interchangeable. Do I have that right?
Yes, at least for the mounting part, there are a few differences between a few of them, especially the ones for landing. They have T-TEP, for example, T-TEP canisters to be able to relight. But in terms of the gimbal mounts and things like that, that's the same for all engines. Mostly for... Oh, we have a shot now here of the...
Oh, yeah, getting
ship.
some views of a shortfall of gravitas. Looks like a beautiful day out there on the ocean for Falcon 9 landing, so it looks good.
It's awesome.
It should be a very beautiful shot. Robert asks
That's
a very
one of
relevant question.
Ooh, I
I
think
was gonna say that's my favorite view.
I think I see a seagull there.
Had to put a TFR up for those seagulls. Robert asks, I always hear drone ship. Do these ships actually have crew on board or not?
No, there is no crew on board, although there is a support ship nearby where the crew lives. And they're roughly 3 miles away, I believe, from the drone ship at landing. And then once the booster is safed, they'll come over and board and secure the booster. We say drone ship, but drone ships are actually only drone ships in the period before and after a landing and while they're catching. They do require tugs or the use of the multi-purpose ships Bob and Doug to get out to and from the landing zone.
Thank you. And real quick, before we get too far close to the launch here, I wanted to thank Nickens in Space for the $5 super chat. We really appreciate the support, and didn't look like they asked a question here, so I'm just going to give this a big thank you and a virtual hug from me to you. So thank you a lot. We appreciate that.
Yes, thank you everyone for their support, and thank you all for tuning in. If you are just joining us, we are approaching the T-minus 2-minute mark for today's Starlink mission. Everything on track to launch 53 Starlink satellites on a flight-proven Falcon 9 rocket from Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. You are looking live from the KSC press site. And today's mission will be flying northeast, so if you are along the eastern coast of the United States, please go take a look after liftoff, because hopefully you'll get some pretty cool views of today's launch. Everything on track, though, and I'm going to hand it off to those in the studio for commentary of today's liftoff while I do my best to keep an eye on this rocket as it lifts off. So I'll see you guys on the other side.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Thomas. All right.
We're now approaching the last 2 minutes. I've just heard the call out that the LOX load on the second stage is complete. That means the rocket is now fully loaded with propellants. So now it's getting ready for flight, pressurizing the tanks, and now at T-minus 1 minute, it's gonna switch to it's gonna take over the control of the countdown. That's gonna be when it comes into startup, and we won't see anything major visually, but then it's gonna come the go no go, and we're gonna be going very silent as we prepare for liftoff.
Absolutely. It's kind of cool to see the rocket venting, and looks very alive and very energetic right before launch. Once everything's all full and loaded, lots of I guess condensation and vents and ice, and it's very, very interesting and beautiful
And
yellow
launch
silhouette.
directory is go for launch.
LD go for launch. That's always a good sign. We are just minutes away from this Starlink launch. We will be putting some more Starlinks into orbit in just a few moments from the Cape. Wow.
We have another 53 Starlink satellites. Ooh. Say this never gets old. Now Falcon 9 is supersonic and passing through max Q.
It really never gets old. And sometimes you just gotta sit and listen to that beautiful roar.
Couldn't agree more. It's just super great.
What an amazing track there by Thomas.
Yeah, he's doing a fantastic job. Now, since the rocket is getting a little bit higher, the exhaust pressure is going, not the exhaust, it's more the atmospheric pressure is going down, so the exhaust is now expanding. That's normal, that's usual, and we actually love to see that because it's awesome. We like awesome stuff, right?
Rockets are awesome in just about every way. There's very few things that are not awesome about rockets. Looks like we've passed max Q here, which is a good thing.
Indeed. We should be approaching now MECO stage separation and MVAC ignition. Now you'll see that right after stage separation and MVAC ignition, SpaceX now is deploying the fairings a little bit faster, so you're going to see the fairings deploy rather quickly after MVAC ignition.
Ooh.
And there we go.
Second
MVAC
stage.
ignition.
I love that view from the interstage. And fairing deploy.
Boop.
Very nice.
Oh, look! The fairing on the second
yeah.
stage camera.
And so far, a very nominal launch, or as Mr. Innsbrucker would say, a very nominal launch so far of this Starlink mission. We have a successful second stage ignition, and it looks like our booster is headed back into the drone ship landing.
Looked like a picture-perfect liftoff from here, guys. Hopefully some folks along the eastern coast also caught a glimpse of that because the skies are clear for the most part. So, great liftoff this morning and everything proceeding well, like you said.
That was a good tracking, Thomas, gotta say.
Definitely. Good
Thank
job.
you.
I mean, I know nothing about how Michael's software works, but I'm pretty sure he loaded some of that software into your head there, because that was great.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I don't, I'm going to lose my job because Michael's just going to replace me with a robot. So I got to do well while I can,
Cue the montage of you training.
But yeah, so the second stage proceeding on towards orbit with the 53 Starlink satellites on board. Meanwhile, the first stage, first stage is
Approaching apogee right now.
just about at apogee right now, actually. Perfect timing. So first stage starting to fall back down towards Earth for its entry burn and then landing burn. And also those fairings are going to be on their way down shortly for their post-splashdown recovery. So all the reusable components on their way back down while the second stage delivers the payloads to orbit.
I'm seeing a few things flying off from the booster. People always ask us what they are. It's usually ice. Always ice, actually.
Yeah. 9 times out of 10, it's ice. The 10th time, it's like something else that's totally not important. Like,
Yeah, the rocket is not really breaking up or something. That's ice.
Yeah,
it just sticks on the booster, and when the booster fires the RCS thrusters, it kind of shakes up, and and it breaks loose and flies away. I gotta say, this view is amazing from the first stage.
Entry burn is coming up. Quite exciting. Great views all the way down so far from the booster. From the SpaceX stream here, I know a lot of times there's some signal and transmission issues, but so far it's been pretty stable. Which, as a devout rocket nerd, I always appreciate the live views.
So the first stage will be lighting 3 of its Merlin 1D engines for the entry burn to protect itself during re-entry. That's coming up next, and there we go.
1, now 3, and when it shuts down, now it goes back to 1, and then it shuts down all of them. It's actually kind of interesting that they do that, but it's
I
better.
actually didn't know
there
that.
we go, 1, and shut down. Yeah, it's 1,
I believe that's
3,
an effect of settling the propellant, right? Like you can light one engine pretty easily, that center engine, and then once that acceleration kicks in, you have a little bit more stable propellant to light the other 2 for a quick entry burn.
Indeed. That's
Fascinating.
that's the explanation. You
Very
also can
fascinating.
see the moon on the second stage feed if you look closely.
Ooh.
Oh, we lost it. It
Oh,
changed
they
camera.
heard you and they had to change it. But yeah, the moon is off to the west from here at the press site, so hopefully if they switch back, you'll see it again.
And there we go. It is
Wow.
there.
Yep, there you go.
Beautiful.
Meanwhile, that first stage is now it's still decelerating, but it's a result of atmospheric drag now instead of the entry burn, which is already completed. So the air doing a lot of the work to help slow that rocket down.
It's
And we'll
like
be coming up on the landing burn.
I believe the vapors there we can see,
Yeah.
I think is probably related with engine chill. I always wonder why. But we saw similar vapors from Starship, remember?
Yes, it could be that. It could also be a result. I think it's a little early now, but later on, if you see a little bit of extra vapor when the vehicle goes transonic,
Mhm.
the transonic regime effects will cause some air condensation. But that's different from venting, of course.
And there we go. Landing burn.
Landing bird underway. Those grid fins
Ooh.
doing their job. There's a short fall of gravitas.
There's the ship. Wow.
That postage stamp just keeps getting bigger and bigger as we come down.
Seems like it's going for a bullseye.
Bullseye. Leg deploy. Wow. I
Nailed
think
it.
that's a perfect bullseye. I think
That is
That's
actually
a
All the way in the
bullseye.
perfect
center.
bullseye.
And this is why we do not do bingo anymore.
Right, because it's getting too easy.
Yeah.
Wow, congratulations,
man.
SpaceX, for recovering yet another Starlink booster. Looks like a perfect bullseye landing on the drone ship after a very successful second stage relight. And looks like we're coming up on Seco here in a few minutes.
There we go.
And there's Seco.
So
Looks like
second
we've
stage
got
now.
another.
Go ahead, Julie.
Oh, I was going to say, it looks like we have another broomstick landing.
That's true.
Yeah.
We do. Is that a merch plug, Julia? Is that what you're teeing me up for? Are you teeing me up to mention that we have a broomstick landing shirt on the NSF store?
What?
Wow, I don't
No
even have to
way.
be next to you and read my mind. Amazing.
If you do want to support what NASA Spaceflight does, please feel free to check out the NASA Spaceflight store, including the broomstick landing merch, but definitely a few other really cool pieces of merch about some current launches going on and some of the inside jokes that we have on these streams. If you want to show your support with things that other people looking at the shirts might not even understand, especially that broomstick landing shirt, go ahead and check out the NASA Spaceflight store, and that, of course, all goes towards improving our coverage at NASA Spaceflight, so really appreciate it.
One of my favorite things about wearing NSF merch around is you get to meet other rocket nerds like me and everybody. We all see each other and you know when you see a full stack shirt or a Raptor Wrangler shirt and like, hey, this person is another fellow rocket nerd. I love it.
Exactly. Well, with booster 1052 back on a drone ship after its 5th trip to space and back, so a successful trip for that booster. Also the upper stage and its 53 Starlink satellites in that coast phase. We'll stay tuned for SpaceX's social media channels for the final confirmation of the quick second burn as well as payload deploy, but everything going well so far. And early morning liftoff appears to have gone nominally. And of course, DAS's favorite post-launch view, an empty launch pad 39A, ready to be prepared for yet another launch after today's successful liftoff. So, thank you all so much for watching. Do we have any final super chats to acknowledge there, Nick?
We just had one come in. Keely6, it looks like, said, shouldn't be too much longer till my Starship plushie arrives. I can't wait. And thank you for that support.
Awesome.
We can't wait for you to get that Starship plushie because I sleep with mine every night. He's very cute.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. I do want to go around the horn really quick for everyone who was on the stream to help make it happen. Alex, thank you so much for joining us on commentary today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course, always. Julia Bergeron offering her expertise as always. Julia, I hope you enjoyed the show from the coast as well.
I always love a morning with the team. And don't forget, y'all, you can come down to port and see another booster come back later on this afternoon.
All right. Shout out to Michael Baylor back in the studio producing today's stream. Michael, thank you for everything that you do from the NASA Spaceflight team. We all greatly appreciate you. Also on commentary today, we had Nick. Nick, thank you so much for joining us early this morning.
Thank you for having me, Thomas. And Michael, we all love what you do. Keep up the good work.
Also, shout out to Stephen Marr, who's out here in the field with us. Looking forward to his photography after today's launch. Check out his social media channel at Space Coast Steve to see what he's got from this morning's launch. And then last but not least, my name is Thomas Burkhart, News Director for here at NASA Spaceflight, bringing you the live views from the press site. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for more coverage. Our next event should pretty much be Starliner OFT2, launching on an Atlas V tomorrow evening. So stay tuned for live coverage from that, as well as all of our regular Boca Chica coverage and things like that. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
Chamber pressure looks good. Toggling up. Roger and roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight outside SCE off. Say again, SCE off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.